Fans of the classic series will know most TV stories were novelised by Target Books. These are very much collector's items now, some fetching up to hundreds of pounds for first editions or mint quality library hardback editions. Terrance Dicks wrote many of these and is quite rightly considered the king of Target novelisations. It was only natural that he would write the Target novelisation for this story, which was originally published in 1977. What is unusual is that Target commissioned a junior Doctor Who novelisation of this story. Whilst this was changed for this younger audience slightly, it still retained the basis of a mad scientist keeping alive a disembodied brain while tasking his servant to find and decapitate a suitable donor. Well, kids aged between 5 and 8 were made of stronger stuff in the 70s, I guess. If, like me, you grew up in the 70s and 80s, you'll know the name Mary Whitehouse. She was a campaigner against many things, most notably against perceived violence on television, particularly children's television. Given the dark themes that Doctor Who enjoyed in the 70s and into the 80s, it's no surprise that the good doctor didn't escape her beady eyes. And this story was of particular concern for her, being the close-up shot of Condor being shot and the blood spurting. This must have knocked poor Mary off her rocking chair. It certainly made her once again write to the BBC in the strongest of terms. This was Saturday tea time viewing, so she may have had a point. The Radio Times is the official BBC listing and feature magazine for BBC TV and, well, radio. It has a long and fruitful relationship with Doctor Who, but sometimes they get things a little bit wrong. The intro blurb for The Brain of Morbius is a little odd to say the least. Perhaps the intern was left unsupervised for this entry. In this scene where Morbius and the Doctor fight in a mind battle, we're shown what we know to be previous incarnations of the Doctor. But it didn't stop there. Once we got to William Hartnell, the faces continued to roll back, suggesting previous incarnations before what we thought was the first. In 1976, this particular aspect of this story didn't create the uproar that it would have done today, with social media likely imploding over this scene. But in 1976, it was very clearly suggested on screen this was not in fact the Doctor's fourth incarnation, but many beyond that. To this day, this scene has been discussed in fan circles and referenced directly and indirectly in other canon stories. The real owners of the faces were all involved in the production of Doctor Who at the time. George Galascio from the production team, Robert Holmes, Graham Harper of the production team, director Douglas Camfield, producer Philip Hinchcliffe, Christopher Baker was on the production team, Robert Banks Stewart was a writer, Christopher Barry was a director. The core of this story had its origins from the Doctor Who stage play of the 1970s, 7 Keys to Doomsday, also written by Terrance Dicks. For The Brain of Morbius, he was commissioned to write a story about a human-robot relationship, which featured heavily in the original version of this story. And in writing this story, he reused some of the concepts he'd formulated for the stage play. Ultimately, the human-robot relationship angle all but disappears from the final story. Terrance Dicks submitted his script to then script editor Robert Holmes. Holmes made many adjustments to the story, primarily to make it producible for television on the allocated budget. So disgruntled was Dicks with the rewrites made by Holmes that Dicks asked for a pseudonym, something bland he asked for. So Robert Holmes duly obliged and credited the story to Robin Bland. The Brain of Morbius was a very early Doctor Who release on home video, being the second ever Doctor Who story released by BBC Worldwide in 1984 on VHS, Betamax and later Laserdisc formats. The first was Revenge of the Cybermen, if you're wondering. The story was trimmed to 59 minutes for this release, and it managed a U certificate, meaning that it was suitable for any age. Even with this heavy editing, it's surprising that a U certificate was achieved. I wonder if the censors actually watched it. Has anyone seen this 59-minute version? Let me know in the comments. I'll be keen to see what it looks like.